Hello and welcome back to another episode of Math with Sohn. Today we are going to be solving by factoring. So let's get into it. So let's say you got a factoring problem, x squared minus 4x equals 12. In order to solve via factoring, it has to equal 0. So in order to equal it to 0, you got to subtract 12, and get x squared minus 4x minus 12 is equal to 0. Now, there are a bunch of ways to factor this. You can use whatever factoring method you have learned. In this case, you could technically be like, what multiplies to 12 but adds to 4? But for my students, I have got them trained, and I think that they love this tic-tac-toe board where you put your first term here, your last term there, and your middle term up in the top of the box. And everything multiplies together. And you multiply the x and the 12 and get 12x squared. And then you have to ask yourself, what multiplies to 12 but adds up to 4? So you can list them out and figure out it's going to be 2 and 6 that multiply to 12 but add to 4. And it doesn't matter where you put either one, as long as you make them negative or positive accordingly. And it's adding or subtracting in a way. In order to add to negative 4, but yet multiply to negative 12, it would have to be negative 6, because if the number in the box is negative, the bigger number is guaranteed to be negative. And then your greatest common factor goes here. What goes into both 6x and x squared is x, and what goes into 2 and x squared is x, and x times x multiplies to x squared as well. X times negative 6 is negative 6x, x times 2 is 2x. The crisscross is your factors. So we have x minus 6 and x plus 2. With as long as there's no number in front, it's going to follow that pattern where it's going to be what multiplies to 12, negative 12, but adds to negative 4. 6, 2, done. The tic-tac-toe is for the harder problems, more importantly. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to figure out how do we solve this equation. And you solve by setting your factors individually equal to 0. So if we add 6, we get x is equal to 6. And if we subtract 2, we get x is equal to negative 2. And those are your solutions. If you wanted to graph it, you could. You could plot a 6, you could plot a negative 2, you could be like parabola. And you could do all sorts of things with those solutions, but normally you just care about what are they. There they are, 6 and negative 2. All right, so let's do another one. Not going to have too many here. Let's say we got 2x squared minus 5x minus 12 is equal to 0. I had to make sure it was actually factorable. So here we got a 2x squared, a minus 5x, and a minus 12. And it's already equal to 0, so we can immediately go in to the tic-tac-toe board. Your first term goes here, 2x squared. Your last term goes right next to it, negative 12. And your middle term goes up in the box. Mine's really up in the box right now. Multiply 2 and 12, you get negative 24x squared. What multiplies to 24 but adds to 5? Well, you may not know, so you can list them out. And you can figure out where there it is. It's a 3 and an 8. So it doesn't matter where you put the 3 or the 8. Hit the camera there. But it does matter which one's negative. And in this case, the 8 would have to be negative to add to negative 5. And you do have to ask yourself, where does 2 belong, with 3 or with 8? And in that case, this case, it is with the 8. Because 2 can go into 8, it can't go into 3. X times 2x makes 2x squared. X times 3 is 3x. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And you got your hidden feature here. 3 times negative 4 makes negative 12. It's like a built-in check your work. The crisscross is your factors. We got x minus 4 and 2x plus 3. Those may be your factors, but your solutions happen when you set each factor individually equal to 0, which in many cases is you add 4, you change the sign, it's just 4. So like here, that's going to be an x equals 4. But with 2x plus 3, it requires you do a small amount of solving. You would first have to subtract 3 and then have to divide by 2. And that would give you your other solution, which is negative 3 divided by 2. Okay? So that's solving by factoring. I'm going to do one other problem that incorporates a slightly different variant, but it's just a different type of factoring problem. It's still going to be the same solving. Your goal is to get the factors by themselves, set them equal to 0, get your 2 answers, call it a day. So the other scenario that I'm going to be dealing with is what happens if it's like 2x squared minus 4x minus 6 equals 0. You could immediately put this into the tic-tac-toe board like I've been doing with all the others, but you should always be looking for, can you divide something away? And if you can, then you should. So if we divide all of these by 2, you get x squared minus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0, and that would make your problem a lot easier because that 2 kind of just disappears. Doesn't need to be there anymore. Like you gotta put it there, but like that's a formality. You're just factoring the x squared minus 3x minus 2 at this point, which is a little bit easier than factoring something with a 2x squared and a 4x and a 6. So I'm going to put the x squared, the negative 3, the negative 2 in the box. What multiplies to 3 but adds to negative 2? That would be negative 3 and 1. Don't even need to write out the things that multiply to 3. X and x, 1 and negative 3. By this point, we should be getting pretty quick at factoring. X minus 1 and x plus 1. So I'm going to write it over here. We got an x plus 1. I think I said the complete wrong thing. And an x minus 3. Don't forget the 2 in front. Don't forget the 2 in front is equal to 0. We have 2 is a factor, does not really equal 0, but if it was 2x, that would be a solution. 2 doesn't equal 0, that one's not a factor that actually would produce a solution, but you got to be careful because if you took out a 2x, it would have been a solution. X plus 1 is equal to 0, where you get x is equal to negative 1. X minus 3 is equal to 0, where you get x is equal to 3. Okay? So be very careful that with that thing that you took out, for instance, if I changed this entire problem to like a 2x to the third minus 4x squared minus 6x, then when I took out a 2x, if I were to take out a 2x, that would give me an answer. That is still a factor that you got to be careful with. If your factor has a x in it, it has a solution. It might not be a unique solution, but it is still a solution, and you need to be aware of that. X squared, you should end up with 2 solutions. X to the third, you should end up with 3. I got off on a tangent there at the end. But there will be plenty more videos. That's going to almost be in a different chapter when you start dealing with x to the thirds. Right now, you should be dealing with mostly x squareds. All right, till next time, see everybody later. Be sure to check out the special cases factoring if you're interested in like these are some weird factor problems, but they're still asking me to factor. All right. See you later, guys. Bye.